This podcast is not sponsored or supported by any business or organization. The views reflected on these podcast episodes are my own. Please be aware I am not a medical expert, travel agent, or any other kind of expert. Hey everyone! Welcome to the Eat, Explore, Love podcast. I'm Ashley. This podcast is based off of my blog of the same name, Eat, Explore, Love. It talks about the unique challenges in traveling around the world when you have celiac disease. Due to sort of popular demand, I decided to also record a podcast to delve a little deeper into my travels and the lessons learned along the way. Today, I am chatting with Leigh Shulman, an author and writing mentor, to discuss how to get inspired and continue your writing journey. She also spent a lot of time traveling around with her family, which gave us a ton to talk about. I found this discussion incredibly helpful as I begin to continue my journey into becoming a writer myself. So, without further ado, here's another episode of Eat, Explore, Love, the podcast. Hi, Leigh. Thank you so much for joining me on the Eat, Explore, Love podcast. I'm so excited to be talking with you. I feel like you are the right person for me to talk with at the right point in my life. So I hope that translates well as we continue on to this conversation. But how are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Ashley, for inviting me on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So, would you be able to give myself and the listeners some insights into you? Who is Leigh? And how take us on your journey to present day, so to speak.
So, who am I? Well, okay, at this point, I live in Argentina. I'm a mom, I'm a writer, not always in that order. It's always, there's always something going on. And like you, I love travel. I like change. I enjoy change. I know a lot of people don't. I like it when something pops up and I have to just adapt to it. It's fun, it's exciting. And I love working with people. I work with people with their writing in lots of different ways. I have a writing community. I also work with people one on one. And I really enjoy the process, not just because we're talking about writing, which for me, writing is very much a sense of self expression. People choose what's important to them, which connects directly to the reason I love teaching writing so much, which is we all have to figure out what we want in this life, and it's really really easy to get distracted by all the noise. And I mean, I think these days a lot of the noise comes from social media or media in general, and knowing who you are really helps ground you, and writing helps you figure out who you are and therefore grounds you.
So, what got you first interested in traveling in the first place? I mean, living in Argentina, that's fantastic. That's amazing.
So let's see. Yeah, and I do love living in Argentina. I've sort of moved around my whole life. So I was born in South Africa. When I was 4, my family moved to the United States. In the United States, we moved around a lot. I've lived in Israel. I've lived in Panama.
Wow.
Um, so, and I think for me, just leaving a place and going somewhere new is something I've done since I was 4. So it's very much part of who I am. And when I started traveling full time before I came to Argentina, I had been living in New York. I was a stay at home mom at that point. I'd been teaching writing before, but stopped. And then when I was at the end of my first pregnancy, I stopped doing that because I couldn't move anymore. And taking the subway an hour and a half uptown was a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and then when my daughter was born, we were in Brooklyn, and I just didn't really like life there. It was really hectic, really busy, everything. There was so much pressure. And even though this isn't the only reason, it's for me it's a very symbolic reason. When my daughter was 2 and it was time for her to potentially go to school, and I started looking into the process of applying to schools, and it was so intense and so much pressure. There were interviews and psychological evaluations, and we had to write an essay, and all to pay $20,000 to send a 2-year-old to school. And I just thought, no, that I can't do that. And then also just sort of life in New York is amazing and it's really fun, but with kids it somehow becomes really difficult, partially because it's you know where I live now, it's if I need something, I get in the car and I go somewhere and I can get everything in one place. Or life is sort of arranged more around having kids and we have space. So it's really easy to say, hey, just go outside and play. You can't do that on the streets of Brooklyn. I think in the past people did, not now. And
Yeah.
there's just so many unspoken rules. And I don't think that's just about parenting. I find that in the US in general, there's so many unspoken rules that left me incredibly anxious. And we looked around and we tried to find certain things and make it work there, and it just didn't. So one day my partner said to me, he's like, why don't we just sell everything and travel? So we just, I would love to say I was just like, yeah, and then we did it. But obviously there's a process and it takes time.
Yeah.
And that's how we left New York. And we didn't know where we were going. We just kind of found ourselves in different places. So we first went to Europe because a friend of ours offered us a place to stay in France. We're like, all right, let's check out France. So we got tickets there. And then from there, just kind of took the next step and the next step until it was time to go because our visa ran out. And Argentina was similar. A friend of mine who actually at the time worked for the UN said how much he loved South America and he really liked Uruguay. And so we got a ticket to Buenos Aires and we just sort of it's in a way it was almost like following breadcrumbs until we
Yeah.
made our way here. And then we liked it, so we stayed.
That's
And that's how
amazing.
I am where I am now.
Yeah, I find that once you get the bug for travel, you can't get rid of it. You just have to you become a lifer nomad, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, which
Yeah.
I've grown to really enjoy that lifestyle. I either have to be completely nomad or I have to be completely settled in one spot. I'm kind of in between right now, and that's very difficult for me. But that's a therapy session for another day. But I'm curious, and this is me, I think, projecting that as I traveled more, the more inspired I became. And now I'm doing all these creative writing exercises for myself. And people are asking me, based on hearing about my travels, seeing photos about my travels, they're like, you should be writing a memoir. And I I don't know that I'll do that, but I have been inspired by what I've seen and what I've learned to do more creative writing. So, based on you, is that what inspired your creativity and sparked your creativity for writing? Or do you think that was always going to be who you were no matter what your circumstances were?
I've always written. I mean, I started writing when I was 12 years old. But I think
Okay.
travel, and I had I got a master's in creative writing and education before I was traveling. So when I said
Okay.
I was teaching prior to that, I was
Yeah.
teaching creative writing and I was teaching different types of writing classes at universities in the United States. But I think what travel did was it freed me up.
Mm,
Um, because when you're traveling, something's always changing. You never quite know how things are going to turn out. Um, like I found my favorite travel days on almost any trip are the days when I didn't plan anything
hmm.
and suddenly the world opens up and you have all these opportunities, and that process of being able to let go enough and not follow the plan and allow yourself to see the opportunities and then take them. That description is pretty much writing.
Yeah.
um and I find a lot of people hold themselves back for writing where, oh, I can't write a book, or, oh, I don't know how to write, or I don't have this yet enough, so I'm not going to do it. And the process of travel and the process of throwing yourself into, you know what, I'm just going to get words on paper and we'll see what happens. They're very similar processes. So I think travel opened me up to say, hey, well, it doesn't have to be a certain way. I don't have to follow a specific structure. All I need to do is just start writing and see what happens. And you start writing and then you see what happens and then you take your next step and your next step. And that builds into a lot more than you think it will very quickly.
Yeah. So how do you evolve from being a teacher? I guess once you're a teacher too, that's something that just always follows you around. As I come from a family of teachers, so I feel like that hasn't changed probably in, but I guess my question is, what does it mean to be an expert book coach? Because I know in your biography, I saw that as a title that you gave yourself. What does that mean, and how does teaching kind of impact that in creative writing? How does that all come together in being a
Well, for
book
me,
coach?
teaching and writing go to get they're the same process in a lot of ways because
Mhm,
I'm constantly writing, I'm constantly learning new things as I'm writing, I'm trying out new techniques. And then when I'm working with people and they're writing, um, when it's fresh for me, I can help people apply it to their own work. And when I'm teaching, that holds me accountable because I don't want to teach something I'm not doing. I know they
mhm.
say those who can't do teach, and I think that's ludicrous because I mean, maybe it's true in certain places, but I think it's a very cynical way of looking at education and teachers.
Mhm,
Um, but for me, if I'm not constantly doing my own work, I don't have as much to offer the people that I'm working with. So, and so I run this writing community. It's called this Inspired Writer Community. And the people in it are doing a wide range of things because the idea is no matter who you are, what you want to write and how you want to write is going to be different. And so I wanted to offer a space where we're not all writing books, we're not all writing articles or pitching articles, that there's a space where everyone can make their own choices and figure out what they want. And so I've got some people who are pitching articles and some people want feedback and some people are writing books. And I'm always doing all of those things. So when somebody asks me a question, I usually have an example for something that's happened to me recently, or I'm also always talking to other writers. I'm in touch with other writers all the time. So if it's not my example of, hey, why don't you try this, there's always someone else that I can offer that. And I also bring mentors into the community, so it's not just me that's giving information. There's lots of people that you can ask information from, get advice, hear how they did it. And that's how teaching and writing go together for me. Expert book coach is a funny thing to say. I feel like in a lot of ways, it's the kind of thing you put on a website so people understand what you're doing because
mhm.
I don't know what else to call it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Expert means I've been doing this for, over 20 years and I do coach people while they're writing books, but that means very different things for different people.
Mhm,
I'm very much about working with people individually so they can trust their own instinct to develop their own process of how they write and how they work. And you prior before we started recording, you had said, how do people start? And I think a really important aspect of writing or creativity in general is trusting your instinct. Um, in a lot of ways, we're trained not to trust our instinct. We're given structures. How you do this is what it's supposed to be. And creativity is all about moving away from what's supposed to be. And you can do what's supposed to be and you can follow the rules if those are right for you. And you are the one
mhm.
who decides what's right for you. And does this make sense for me?
So when someone's pitching you an idea, let's say for a book, how do you guide someone through that process of, there's a million stories like that. Let's find the thing that makes is going to set yours apart. Because I feel like um, everybody's stories, no matter what they do or what they write, will be inherently different because everybody's different and there's no two people that are alike. So everybody's perspective creates this thing. But how do you make sure? Are you helping someone writing for a commercial success, or do you help them write just for their insides to write a book that they're proud of and could put out into the world? How do you
That
guide them
really
in that way?
that really depends on the person.
Mhm.
So if somebody comes to, I will work with someone if they're saying, I just want to learn how to write. I've never done this. I want to see what happens. I'll do that.
Mhm.
But if somebody's saying, hey, I want to write and publish this book and make it a commercial success, we can work on that level too. And there's different processes. I mean, realistically, the first thing you do for any book, whether it's meant to be a commercial success or you're keeping it for yourself, and I'm just going to stop there for a second. Very few, I don't think I've really ever met somebody who has written a book that they wanted to keep to themselves. That's not
Mhm.
really the reason we write. And I find when people say, oh no, I don't want to share it with anyone, it's usually because of fear, not because they actually don't want to share it.
Mhm.
So I do talk about publishing and I do think about publishing when I'm working with somebody on a book. But really, the first step is, and the best advice that I've heard and that I give in terms of writing a book is write the book that you want to write. Now, okay, well, what is that book? That's a process that I work on with people. Well, what is it that
Mhm.
you want? What is the message that you want? I always actually, not just often, talk about what is your book about. And when I say about with a capital A, I don't mean what's the plot. I mean, what is it that you want your readers to understand and feel when they're finished reading your book? So, you've read a book and you kind of take that moment after you're finished to just kind of think about it and like what you took away from it. And
Mhm.
and it's not just not always books. It could be television. It can be a lot of different
Mhm.
creative outlets. So let's say really one that really sticks out for me is the final episode of 6 Feet Under. And I remember watching it, and I think it's a 2 hour episode. And at the end, especially after sort of the end scene, I remember feeling, oh, yeah, that's what life is about. You have your ups and downs, and you're moving
Mhm.
forward, and you create, and you don't create, and you're happy, and you're disappointed. And that's what life is about. It's about moving forward because eventually we all die. And I just
Mhm.
had this really powerful, like, oh, yeah. And actually, that show is where I came up with the idea for using the about sentence as a tool for your book, where what's that one sentence that describes what you want people to understand and feel when they're done reading your book.
Mhm.
So it starts there. And in my experience, people know. So whether you know what you want to write, whether you know how to write, whether you feel doubt about your writing, or even doubt about how to start writing, I've never really met someone who had no idea what it was what message they wanted to share with people. So it starts with your message, and then we can talk about, well, how? How do you want to share it?
Mhm.
What kind of stories do you want to tell? And again, most people know. Most people
Yeah.
know, even if they don't have a clear vision of the book in their mind, they know what they want to share.
You also sound like someone, which I think is also a hallmark of a good teacher, where there may be no bad ideas and no wrong way of looking at anything. But from the television and film world, for me, I clue in when I'm talking to someone about an idea for a script or a production, when they're coming in. And I have family members that will come to me with the mentality of, "But how much money are you gonna make out of this?" And for me, that's where a red flag for me of, that's not why you do any creative endeavor. I didn't do theater to make money, I didn't do TV and film to make money, I just had a creative personality, and I just wanted to tell good stories. Do you feel with books there's a similar thing that you'll find people say certain things, it's a red flag to you, and you have to reel them back in and help them reprioritize the purpose? Or are you like, there's no bad ideas, wherever this takes us, we'll go?
I I don't know that feel either. And I'll say, when people come like, how much money am I going to make with the book? And no, the truth is people don't usually say that to me.
Yeah.
I've had people's parents say that to me. There
Mhm.
was I think she was about 17. So in order to work with a 17-year-old, I need permission from a person's parents. Um, and when her parents came, they were asking, well, how much money are we going to make from this book? And I'm like, well, there are a lot of steps between I have a book idea and making a lot of money from a book. There's an entire career in between those 2 points.
Mhm.
Um, I think like the red flag that I often hear from people is, oh, have I read anything that you've written? And that's not so much a person who wants to write. That's something that when you are writing, you will come up against that. And it does look at writing a book as a commodity that makes money. Now, I think it's
Mhm.
really important that we get paid for our creative work. And it's really important that when you're writing an article that you get paid for it, and that there's so many times people ask you for free work. And I think it's a really good habit to not do that, to really say,
Mhm.
well, no, I'm not here to just give away my creativity and my time and my energy. There is value to it. So I think money is really important, and it's a really important part of the process of being a writer, because if you want to write, how are you going to write if nobody ever pays you for it? You're going to need two jobs, and writing is a full-time job for me. Writing and teaching writing is there are not enough hours in the day to do all the things that I want.
Mhm.
Um, but the process of writing a book and then publishing a book, I separated into two pieces, because writing is a very internal process, and it's not the kind of thing you want to advertise to every single person you know and get as much input as possible, because that will shut you down, because that's too much, and too many people will bring ideas to you that will shut you down, and they will
Mhm.
put value on the wrong things. But so the writing is a very internal, personal process that you only talk to people that you trust, who know how to give feedback, who know how to write a book, or know what it's like in some ways, so that they're encouraging you to follow your instinct, to find your own creative process. Whereas
Mhm.
publishing, which is designed to make money, it's also designed, I mean, you write something, you want people to read it, you want to get your message out there, and that's what publishing is about also. But it is about making money, and it is about letting as many people know about it as possible, and getting as much feedback as possible, hopefully good feedback, so more people are sharing your book and more people are buying your book. But the reality about making money on a book, there aren't, I mean, the idea that you're going to write one book and suddenly you're Stephen King, or I hate to say J.K. Rowling because there's so much other stuff with her going on. There just
Right.
aren't a lot of, I mean, there's stuff like that with Stephen King too. It's just people don't talk about it as much.
No, yeah, no person is clean in their personal lives. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But just how
Separating the art
popular
from the
they
artist.
are and how much of
Yeah.
a franchise their books have become, that
Yeah.
doesn't happen that often. But it is, and even so, there's a process of building your career. I see it all the time, where an author will write something and their first book does well, but it's not going to it's unlikely to do as well as their fifth book, where you're
Mhm.
building an audience and you're building a readership, and you're building your career in writing one piece at a time, and each book adds to that.
Yeah.
And that is a lifelong thing. So how much, yes, there are people who they'll write their debut book and they'll put it out there and they make huge amounts of money, and then they're busy forever. Most of the people that I know, that even if their first book does that well or goes that big, and there's one person I'm thinking of in particular, Disha Filia,
Mhm.
who wrote The Sex Lives of Church Ladies, and it's a book of short stories. It did incredibly well. It's not like that book came out of nowhere. It's not like she hadn't been writing and teaching and talking about writing and had another book prior to that on a totally
Mhm.
different topic. Like that book, like she worked really, really hard for that success, and she deserves every second of it. And
Mhm.
also the contacts that she had, and the people who support her, and the people that she had given feedback to, and the people that gave her feedback. There was a lot that went into that, leading up to the popularity of that one book. So, I mean, I know I've said a lot about it, but I think it's really easy to have unrealistic expectations of what good writing means. And I find this to be, going back to travel, you might know that you want to go to Portugal. I'd love to go to Portugal. You're there now, right?
No, I
Um,
was there a few weeks ago, though.
got it.
Yeah.
So I've never been. I would love to go to Portugal, but I don't know everything I would do in Portugal yet. And I don't know what
Mhm.
photos I'm going to take. And I don't know what I'm going to write about it afterwards. I only know it's something I would want to do. And that's very similar to writing a book. And even if you do, even when I do eventually go to Portugal, I might read about it beforehand. I'll plan, I'll have some ideas, but that's not everything that's going to happen in Portugal.
Yeah.
And I can't plan for everything. And so it's one step at a time. Like, I know I want to go, you get tickets, you get there, you do one thing at a time. And writing books is very much like that. So I always encourage people, like, if you have an idea for a book. So earlier you had said people say to you, you should write a book. I'm always wary of sentences that include the word should. You should.
Mhm.
What does that mean? You should. I don't know how to say that. And I think the question is, well, do you want to write a book?
Mhm.
And I'm asking you, do you want to write a book?
Oh, no, it's on I'm getting started. I would like to start off by doing short stories and
Okay.
build into that. I don't know that I wanna do the travel memoir that everybody would like me to do, because I don't
Got
think
it.
it's gonna be a story that I'm ready to share with people yet, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes
Um,
perfect sense. That makes perfect
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you said, it's a very to me, writing is a very vulnerable process. And so it's something that people have so many opinions on that they and it like I said, when you're putting yourself out there, writing in particular to me is more vulnerable than putting out a movie. Because making a movie is such a team effort and collaborative process where I feel like writing is a very solo venture other than, you talking with a mentor or an editor, publisher person. It's pretty much you writing your feelings and your thoughts and putting it out there for the world. And to me, it's way more personal. So I'm just starting in baby steps now of getting myself there, which I guess is that a recommendation that you have of maybe people start out small and write these short stories and just see where that takes them? Is there no one size fits all system to this? You go with what inspires you.
Yeah. There's definitely no one size fits all. Sometimes people, I actually had a professor in grad school who told me this. People think they're gonna, like, they actually want to write a book, but they'll say, I'll just do short stories and see if I can get them to come together as a book. Um,
Mhm.
which is, I think any way you do it is fine. I think if you want to write, you just start writing. And
Mhm.
that sounds, very vague in a certain way. But the thing is, like, when you sit down to start writing, something happens when you put things on the page. And what you put on the page will take you to the next page and the next page. And then if you get stuck, and I say stuck, but I don't actually believe in writer's block. Like, the idea of
Mhm.
writer's block, that I just can't write and nothing's going to happen, in a lot of ways people use that as an excuse to just not sit down and write. But if you're stuck and you repeatedly go back to the page and continue to put words down, even if you don't like them, even if, it's very likely we all have an internal editor, that you'll have this internal editor being like, well, that sucks, I don't like that, that's no good. In a sense, the constant process of sitting down to write is all about learning to turn off that internal editor, and also
Mm.
shutting down, I forget the name of the book, the War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, where
Okay.
he's the one who came up with the concept. I think he's the one who came up with the concept of resistance, that when you sit down to write, it's like everything rises up in you to be like, no, no, don't. Just anything to get you to not write, or whatever you want to do creatively. I mean, I think it's the same with painting, it's the same with film, it's the same with
Mm.
any creative endeavor, that there are all these sort of internal voices saying no, why you shouldn't. And just to kind of not listen and just write anyway, and give yourself permission to just put whatever happens on the page,
Mhm.
whether it's clean, whether it's good. None of that matters, because getting it on, taking it from translating the words in your head and the ideas that you have in your head and translating it to the written word starts by just getting the words down. Once they're
Yeah.
down, then you can take your next step and you can make decisions on it. You know, a lot of writers say, this happens to me all the time, where I'll write something and I'll be like, oh, this is crap. And then when I go back to read it, I'm like, wait, I wrote that? I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, imagine if I erased it before I gave it a chance. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of us do that. It's a natural tendency. Um, so in terms of your book, I mean, normally what, usually when I before I work with somebody, we sit down and talk. And I think often people think that that discussion is about, am I good enough? And it
Mhm.
never is. Or if I'm judging to see, are you good enough to write? And it's never about that as far as I'm concerned. It's about, let's talk about your ideas. What are your ideas? Now, if somebody is sitting in front of me and they don't really have ideas, which really almost never happens.
Right, if they're
Um,
coming to you, they have a thing in their head, yeah. That'd be
yeah,
strange if they're coming to you and don't have any inkling at all.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people have a tendency to discount their ideas, and
Mhm,
almost feeling like when people are like, "Oh, I have so many and I'm all over the place and I don't know this," but that's creativity. It's chaotic,
mhm,
and I often talk about the chaos of creativity, where there's like a million ideas and a million things to do, and I could do this and I could go here. Well, when you take all of that and you put it on paper, and I say paper, but it could be however you're getting it out and into a written form. However you do that, whatever you've done will be useful to you. And when people
mhm,
come to me with their ideas, I think they, like I said, we often downgrade our ideas as if they're not, as if books just magically appear perfectly written and well edited, and it's a simple easy process to go from the idea you had to the book, and that you're supposed to know everything about it as you're making the decisions, which is not
mhm,
at all what it looks like. I had a book that I was on my third draft. And I think it was like, well, what does my character like to wear? I'm like, how did I get to a third draft without knowing what my character likes to wear or what she looks like? Like, how did that happen?
mhm.
It happens, and it
Yeah.
happens to everybody, no matter how much experience you have. So yeah. So you said, like, if somebody comes to me, well, let's say you're talking about, you want to write, you want to write. You're not sure you're ready for to write about your travels yet. You think you might
Mhm.
want to write short stories, but it sounds like the short stories are your way of getting to a book. You know,
Yeah, I don't have that far in advance. So I'll say one idea that I'm actually trying to be careful because I don't want anybody to steal my idea, but that's silly. There's no such thing. So with everything going on in the world, one idea I had for a series of short stories that I had was in Europe, they have these bronze stones for Holocaust victims. And the stones are usually in the last place where they lived or where they worked. And I took photos of ones that I interacted with on my journeys and in my travels. And I wanted to write fictionalized versions of that person's story and cut it off midway. And my message and my point is of trying to get across, let's stop trying to remove a person based on religious beliefs or just their personal choice, not choices, but the way that they are born, what have you, from this earth, because look at all that goes missing and all that gets cut off from this world when you try to do that. So that's one series of short stories I have in my head. I just have to put pen to paper, so to speak, as you're saying. So that's one of the many ideas I have so far. We could start with that one if you want an idea to play off of.
so all right. So if we were having that call where we were sitting down to talk about that idea, I think my next question would be, well, let's talk about the individual stories. Tell me some of those stories. Tell me some of the
Mhm.
ideas that you have, because you definitely, like, you do have your about sentence. I mean, it may not be in
Yeah.
sentence form yet, but you did, it was in what you were talking about. And often I'll say, well, what is one sentence? Describe everything you just said in one sentence. And what that really helps you do is take all those ideas and kind of, you know, take them down to one basic idea. And
Mhm.
again, it's not like you're going to say your first sentence and, gates open
Mhm.
and, trumpets blare and, like, this is it. You can still work on it. You can change it along the way. And quite frankly, sometimes that sentence changes after you write your first draft, because you've written your
Yeah.
draft and you're like, oh, wait, I've learned a lot along the way. Let
Mhm.
me, let me modify that sentence. There's something a little more or a little deeper, a different place that I want to go. So with yours, I guess also I would say, well, tell me about the photos that you took. Tell me, where
Mm.
are these places? What are these people? And we would probably talk a little bit about the different ideas that you have for the individual people. And so when I'm working with someone also, I am, I don't want people to worry about, is this book publish worthy, and will it
Yeah.
get, will it make a lot of money while they're writing it? Because that's going to get in the
Right.
way. Because what that
Yeah.
does is you're then writing for the people who'd be reading your book. You can't, you don't know, like that's, then you're trying to make your book measure up to what someone else wants. And those people are imaginary when you're writing the book. So you've then created an impossible task for yourself. Here, write a book that pleases somebody that doesn't actually exist.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't work. But I do always keep in mind while I'm working with people, is this something that makes sense to write? Is this something that an an agent or an editor would want? Um, you know, like for example, if somebody comes, well, actually, the funny thing is, one person did come to me with this. He was writing it's a sci-fi book, so it was fiction based on his time working in the Peace Corps, working in the South Asia, in the islands in the South Pacific.
Hmm.
And he started telling me my book is about this young girl, and I'm like, oh, okay. So you want to write the story of a young girl who's from a totally different culture than you.
Right.
So then we had the conversation of, are you the right person to write that book? And quite
Mm.
frankly, most people would not be able to pull that off.
Right.
I think he was able to pull that off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he wasn't trying to speak for 14-year-old girls living in the South Pacific. He was just telling a story with other pieces around it, and what it actually related to more, what the book, sort of the core of the book, was more about how he related to the death of his mother.
Mm.
So, sort of pulling that back to your actual question, what do I tell people whether their book is viable? I mean, I don't even know if my book is viable. I'm currently querying a book to agents. I don't know what agents are going to say. I don't know if the market right now is perfect for my book or not. Um, what I can say is, does this book have a structure? Does this book tell a story? Is the
Hmm.
story that's being told, does it make sense to tell it? Things like Rudyard Kipling, when Rudyard Kipling wrote, that was his type of writing, was perfect for that time and
Yeah.
was very well accepted. I don't think an English man going into India and telling stories about Indians is something that people are looking for now. So if
Right.
that's something you want your book to be about, you might want to shift it somehow and make
Right.
it fit what the market is actually now. And the market reflects where we are generally. What is it
Yeah.
that people want to read? Where are we going as a society?
Right.
And how are we developing? So I like to keep that stuff in mind while other people are writing their books. And I'll ask questions along the way, and I don't know. There's an agent, Janet Reed, who actually passed away recently. I saw online that she had passed away, and she wrote this blog post basically saying, like, it's a harsh way of saying it, like, nobody cares about your story.
Mm.
So, and that may not have been exactly how she said it, and that sounds very disheartening, but it's sort of like, your story isn't just your story when you write it.
Right.
You're
Right.
writing it for people in general, and you're not everybody, but you're writing a message for people who need to hear that story.
Mm.
So, i've been I worked with this woman who, she was in a bad car accident. Her boyfriend died in the accident. The love of her life died in that accident, and she ended up with a traumatic brain injury.
Mm.
So, it's, all of our stories are worthy, all of our stories have meaning and value.
Right.
But when your story is only about you, to say what happened to you, that is not a book. It's when your story radiates outward and has a message for other
Hmm.
people,
Yeah.
so that others who have experienced it or about to experience it want to understand it, have empathy for it, so that when they hear your story, that they take on that little piece of humanity with you. or they feel heard and understood, that's what that's when your book supersedes your own story and goes, and that's when it's a good story to tell in a book, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. Um, I have one last big question before I get us into our rapid fire. But as far as, so just to, I feel like we've kind of taken us through the beginning of the process, the middle of the process, and then I want to quickly cover the end of the process. What's your advice once people start shopping out their books to a publisher or an editor or an agent? What's the like big overarching advice that you're able to give people at that part of the process?
I call that the brushing your teeth phase of writing,
Mm.
because like, no, very, I don't know how many people wake up in the morning being like, oh my God, I can't wait to brush my teeth. But you do brush your teeth because that's hygiene, and there's a process for it. You take your toothbrush and that's what shopping your book around means. It means, is my book well put together? Is it my, when I'm saying you finish the editing process, you finish that whole thing. Is it formatted properly? Am I following the guideline? Well, what are the guidelines of the people I'm pitching it to? Oh, what information do I need to send with it? And you basically put together materials for that. And publishers are going to want one thing. And when you send to a publisher, you're generally sending to an editor.
Mm.
It really depends. Or you can send to an agent, and then the agent then shops it around to the publishers for you. And some publishers will only take from agents, and some publishers you can send yourself. So it's really about making sure all your materials are put together properly, and you're looking at the right agents or the right publishers, that they fit your book, and that the package that you put together, it's usually a query, which is, there's a specific format for it, and getting feedback on you. And so just getting all the materials ready, and just one by one sending them out, and just doing it until you find your right place.
Mm.
Um, and it can be really frustrating. Like, I have a friend who, I'm not going to say who yet because I don't know if she's announced it yet, but I think she sent out almost 200 queries before she found the right person to publish her
Mm.
book. It can be a very long and frustrating process. So it's all about, you just get up every day and you brush your teeth. And that's why I
Yeah.
call it that. And one of the best things you can do while you're shopping it around is choose another creative project and put your
Mhm.
energy into that. So literally, it's like, I'm querying, I'm like, I take up my list of queries, my agents, I see, okay, this one, I go through the process, I send them what they ask for, done, move on to the next. And that's
Yeah.
it. And then I try not to think about it until I get a response.
Yeah. That's and what are your thoughts on, self-publishing if someone wanted to go that route?
I think it depends why you want to self-publish. I think,
Mhm.
it always goes back to like, what is it that you want for your writing?
Mhm.
So, I am shopping around my fiction because I want I want to see what happens, and I want to see that
Mm.
process. And I think it would be interesting, and I prefer not to self-publish everything I do because it is a lot of time and effort. But for my nonfiction that's about writing, I like to self publish it because I like the control I have over it. I'm not
Mm.
necessarily, I want to be able to do it as quickly as possible, because the process of, pitching to an agent, and then getting to a publisher, and then, that could take 2, 3 years or more.
Mhm.
Whereas you self publish, you could do it in 3 months if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So, and it also depends what your purpose is. So I was working with somebody recently. She wrote the book, Philanthropy for All. It's a wonderful book. And we did talk about, well, what are your choices here? Why would you want to publish with a publishing company? Why would you want to self-publish? And ultimately her reason for it was, she wants to get the information out there. She wants people to be able to have it. And it also depends how much, well, people often say, I want to publish with a publishing house because I don't want to market. You're marketing your book no matter what.
Mhm.
No matter who you are, no matter how you publish your book, you're marketing it. So I think self publishing is a really solid option. And I think a lot of the negativity around it is old. It's old stuff.
Mm.
That maybe 20 years ago, self publishing did mean going to a vanity press, Whereas now self-publishing, I think it's 100% viable option. And I mean, there are even people who've made so much money through their self-publishing that they ended up
Right.
putting together a course to teach people how to self-publish. So,
Yeah.
I think again, as with anything else, you do what's right for you and not let the shoulds of other people impact your choices.
Right. Absolutely. Um, I want to just be aware of your time. So
Yeah,
I usually do a rapid fire questionnaire at the end of every episode. So I hope that's okay to
yeah, perfectly
ask
fine.
you.
Let's do
Perfect.
it.
What is your and by the way, thank you for all the information that you shared because it's, again, I'm just starting on my journey. I have all the ideas. I just need to get the pen to paper. So thank you for all this advice that you've
Of course.
given. Incredibly helpful. What is your favorite food city that you visited?
My favorite food city?
Yeah, your favorite
Food
place where
city.
you've had food.
I have to say, it's the weird thing to say. I really like food in Atlanta.
Okay.
Atlanta Atlanta has an incredibly wide range of options, and they have high
Mhm.
level and sort of like typical restaurants, but there's a road, Buford Highway in Atlanta, and
Nice.
all along Buford Highway, I think a lot of immigrants when they come there, they kind of settle near there because it's a slightly cheaper area to live.
Yeah,
You can get any food that you want, and it is so good. And you just go down the street, and they've been like Chinese food, Peruvian food, Mexican, Thailand, and you just kind of go. And there are also supermarkets for every restaurant. You'll find a supermarket there. So if you want to buy things and bring them home and try it yourself, you can do that.
that's amazing. I have relatives in Atlanta, so I'll have to do that on my visit to them. Do you prefer a vacation that requires you to be active or relax?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I like both. I like both. I love a beach vacation, but if I'm going on a beach vacation, I'd love to go for a hike too. I really,
Yeah,
I really like to explore. I love to meet people. So in a sense, I'm not really answering your question. What I really like is to be able to get to know a place and whatever is involved in that place. You know, as long as I'm not a big resort person because I feel like
that's
that's a very
totally fair.
plastic view of things. Going out,
Mhm.
meeting people, talking to people, and sometimes that means like trekking through the jungle, and sometimes that means hanging out on the beach and having tacos.
Yes. And what is the city where you learned the most about yourself?
New York, New York
Mm.
City. I wish I could say, in a way, it would be awesome if I could be like, and I went to this place and I found out so much. But I spent so much time in New York City, and I mean, I started there in university and was there, through my first job, through having a kid, through writing, through graduate school.
Yeah.
And it's always changing, and there's always something new. And I really
Mhm.
love that about New York.
Yeah, if you're gonna learn anywhere, that is the place to do it. And if you could just you gave a lot of really great advice today, and I'm sure people that are inspired. I have a lot of friends that are also into writing and want to be writers. Is there any place where they could find you in particular? Any books that they could get of yours? Where can they find you and stalk you and get whatever information they need from
Okay.
you?
Well, don't stalk, just say hi.
Yeah.
That's fine. Please say hi. So there's two places. So one of them, Instagram, is always a great place for me because I'm constantly on there and I'm interacting. And you can get, on my, my link tree and my, LinkedIn profile, you can get my book, you can get pretty much everything I do. And I also respond when people messages, not so much because they get shoved into like the whatever box. But if you
Yeah.
comment on a post, I always respond. And then I actually have a special page on my website. Like you can't find it through my website, but I'll give you the
Mhm.
direct address.
Yeah.
It's leishulman.com/podcast
Okay.
and podcast, and that will take you to a special invitation if you want to join, like, as part of my writing community. I have co-working sessions and coaching sessions, so if you want to join one of those, you're welcome to. Or if you would like to meet and chat, that's a great way to get in touch with me. So it's leishulman.com/podcast.
Okay.
And on Instagram, I'm the Leigh Shulman because somebody took my name for whatever reason. There's
Rude.
nothing on the page, but just put a the in front of my name. and you'll
Okay.
find me there.
That's amazing. All right, perfect. So we'll make sure that everybody goes to leishulman.com/podcast, or even just leishulman.com. I'm sure they'll find the resources, and at the Leigh Shulman on Instagram. So perfect. Thank you so much, Leigh. It was so amazing getting to meet you and chat with you, and your insights were really, truly incredible. So thank you so much for that.
And thank you for having me here and letting me talk.
Yeah, of course. That's what we're here for. Right. And that's another incredible episode of Eat, Explore, Love, the podcast. I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Leigh and it inspires you to get writing as well. I have been finding it incredibly therapeutic and inspiring, rejuvenating, and all the positive, wonderful things. So make sure you check out Leigh Shulman's book and that you check out the website, all in the links below in the show notes. Thank you so much. Till next time. Thank you for joining me this week for all the fun journeys and lessons learned on my big adventure called life. For more information on the different cities discussed, check out the blog posts on hieatexplorelove.com, posted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have any questions or fun stories to share, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Until next week, remember to eat well, explore the world, and love yourself. See you next time. This episode is produced, scripted, and edited by me, Ashley. Special thanks to Sarah Mientka.